So let's just dive right into this fundamental puzzle of human behavior. Why is it that some leaders just effortlessly inspire loyalty, while others, even the ones who literally have all the money and market share in the world, completely fail to connect? It's kind of fascinating, right? We see this everywhere, in business and politics, in our own lives. You've got these people who can rally a crowd and change the world, and then others who can barely get us to pay attention.
Well, welcome to our explainer of Simon Sinek's game-changing concept from his book, Start With Why. Today, we're essentially going to build out a mind map connecting the key domains of discussion from this work. Together, we'll unpack the actual secret to lasting influence. We're going to look way past those surface-level tactics so many companies rely on and dig into the core patterns of thinking and communicating that give truly great leaders their power.
Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. First, we'll cover the golden circle, then the biology of belief, followed by reaching the tipping point, and finally, when the split happens. All right, jumping right into section 1, the golden circle. Think about it. We usually see two very different approaches when trying to drive human behavior. The standard one, it relies heavily on carrots and sticks. It's basically manipulation, right? Dropping prices, running flashy promotions, adding a ton of features. And look, while that kind of manipulation absolutely works in the short term, it just doesn't breed real loyalty. Over time, it actually just creates a ton of stress and drives up costs for everybody. But then you have the golden circle approach, inspiration. This is all about winning hearts before minds. It's a completely different mental map, one that builds a fiercely loyal following that acts out of genuine passion, not just because they were coaxed into it. Now, there's this fantastic quote that really makes you stop and think. True leadership isn't about holding a fancy title or having formal power. It's about giving people a reason to follow based on their own intrinsic motivations. Whether it's one person or a massive global brand, we follow those who lead because we want to, not because we have to. We're drawn to them simply because what they believe aligns perfectly with what we believe.
Which brings us nicely to section 2, the biology of belief.
You might think this whole why thing is just some fluffy, abstract motivational theory, but it's actually deeply rooted in human anatomy. This is where our mind map gets literal. Think of the golden circle as a cross-section of the brain. Notice how the why maps perfectly onto our inner limbic brain, while the what matches up with the outer neocortex. Okay, so here's the crazy part. There's a literal biological division of labor happening inside our heads. Our outer neocortex, that handles all the rational facts, analytical thought, and language. It totally understands the what. But that inner limbic brain controls our feelings, things like deep trust and loyalty, and it actually drives all human decision-making. But here is the kicker. The limbic brain has absolutely zero capacity for language, no words at all, which completely explains why it's so incredibly hard to put our deepest purposes into words. When you try to explain why you love your partner or why you are obsessed with a specific brand, you usually stumble, right? We have to rely on metaphors because the part of the brain making the actual decision literally does not control speech. But here's the thing, just knowing your why isn't enough. You need the right people to actually pull it off. It takes a partnership. You absolutely need the visionary why types. People like Bill Gates or Walt Disney, who imagine a world that doesn't even exist yet. But you equally need the how types. They're the practical builders bringing that vision to life. Walt Disney had the incredible dream, but it was his brother Roy Disney who actually built the company. Without someone inspired by the vision, who also has the chops to build it, a Y type is really just a starving visionary. Let's actually look at this in action. The number 10 here represents a massive revolution in aviation, the 10-minute turnaround pioneered by Southwest Airlines. Now, most people just assume this was some clever operational trick to make more money, but actually, it was born out of a profound why. Back in 1971, Southwest was running out of cash fast. They had to sell off one of their planes, leaving them with only 3. But because their crystal clear why was championing freedom and keeping everyday people flying, they were inspired to innovate through the crisis instead of just throwing in the towel. Their how types figured out how to fly a 4-plane schedule using only 3 planes by turning them around at the gate in an unheard of 10 minutes. The what was the process, sure, but the why is what actually made it possible. Moving right along to section 3, reaching the tipping point. So if you want your idea to become more than just a passing fad, you really have to understand the law of diffusion of innovations. It always starts with the innovators and then moves to the early adopters. These are the folks who will gladly suffer inconveniences or pay higher prices just to be a part of what you're doing.
simply because they believe what you believe. And according to this law, a true tipping point only happens when these early adopters proudly prove your value to the practical majority. You literally can't skip the line. You've got to win the hearts of those early adopters first by broadcasting your why.
Just imagine the sheer absurdity of this for a second. What if Martin Luther King had delivered a comprehensive 12-point plan about achieving civil rights in America? Imagine him standing there at the Lincoln Memorial, this massive symbol of freedom, and just dryly reading off a sterile list of policy what's. There's no way that would have worked. Dr. King inspired a massive movement because he passionately shared his dream. He didn't give the I have a plan speech, he gave the I have a dream speech. People showed up for themselves because his words resonated perfectly with what they already felt deep in their own limbic brains.
Finally, let's tackle Section 4, when the split happens.
So, success can actually be a bit of a trap. It's often the greatest enemy of the why. It leads to this dangerous phenomenon Sinek calls the split. It's that phase where there's a huge disconnect between the tangible things a company produces, the what, and its original intangible cause, the why. When an organization is tiny, the founder's passion is infectious. Everyone feels it. But as a company scales up, adds layers of middle management, and the founder eventually steps back, that original clarity can get incredibly fuzzy.
And honestly, no one is immune to this. Just look at giants like Walmart, Microsoft, and Apple. Every single one of them had to navigate this perilous split. When Sam Walton passed away, Walmart really struggled to maintain its original why of serving the community, kind of confusing it with just offering cheap stuff. Microsoft hit the split after Bill Gates stepped back and Steve Ballmer took the reins, pivoting heavily toward the what and the bottom line. Even Apple faced it. When Steve Jobs was notoriously pushed out in the 80s, it resulted in years of Apple just pushing evolutionary whats instead of those revolutionary whys they were known for.
So as we wrap up our mind map of this incredible explainer, I want to leave you with a pretty provocative question to ponder for your own life. Whether it's in your career, your business, or your own personal leadership journey, are you just pushing the rational facts and features of what you do, or are you truly inspiring action by starting with your why? Because the biology of our own brains proves that if you want to create lasting loyalty, you absolutely have to win hearts before minds. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer.